Hey, this is singer-songwriter Danny Horovitz, and you're listening to Citywide Blackout.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. This is our first recording of 2024. It's great to have you here. A new year, new possibilities. You're going to see a lot of new guests, new ideas, and a whole lot more. And you know, what a great way to start this whole thing off by just talking music. And in fact, my next guest is a mainstay of the Boston music scene. If you know the band Mistle Thrush, likely you will recognize the name of Valerie Forgione to talk about her new project, Lovina Falls. Valerie, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be here.
All right. There is so much to dive into because if you have not yet heard her debut album for this new project, Calculating the Angle of Our Descent, check this thing out. It's a great collection of music. But I guess I want to start by just asking how this solo project came to be, because you've done like bands in the past, but this is you just all on your own.
I guess the short answer is I really missed writing and recording and performing. The longer answer is I spent the last 10 years or so writing soundtrack music for plays, for podcasts, for theater, or for indie film, and writing instrumentals. And so I spent a lot of time sort of learning how to put sort of scenes and moods together through music in a different way than I had being in a band. And in the process of doing so, I would get very sidetracked. So I have a studio down in the basement, and I'd be like, oh, I've got to write the scene where the man comes in and blah, blah, blah. And then I start writing something else. And then, 3 hours later, I'm like, oh, I had this thing, I have a deadline. I totally got sidetracked. So the album sort of started that way, sort of by little mistakes and wanderings while doing my real work. And then eventually I thought, well, you know what, why don't I just go in and record a couple songs? I had gotten together with a few folks trying to put a band together, and that the connection really wasn't there. It's really tough when you've been in a band for a real long time with people who are your family and you've just connected with them. You can't repeat that. So in an effort to try to do that, I got together with other people and the connection wasn't there. It's just not the same thing. So I talk a lot. I'm sorry. Long story short, I decided to go in and just record one or two songs. And one or two songs turned into 5 or 6, and then they turned into 10 and 11, and suddenly had an album's worth of material and thought, well, perhaps I should do something with this.
I love how this thing just started as something you were kind of just doing just like on your own for fun. And finally said, you know what, I have basically an album here. I may as well just go and like record the damn thing.
Well, I will say, it wasn't, the songs weren't fully fleshed out. They were lots and lots of ideas. And as soon as I started recording, more ideas would happen. And then I thought, well, I need a bass part for this. I have to figure out how to play the bass. Or I need a drum part for this. I have to figure out how to make the drum part happen, So, but it started from a very organic place and sort of rolled into what it's become.
Now, going from bands to doing something totally on your own, did you get a chance to learn new recording techniques, new instruments, things like that?
Yeah, actually, yes, I'm poorly self-taught. It's really what it comes down to. Like I said, I've always had someone to say, hey, can you play a bass part to this? And now it was sort of up to me. I mean, I'm a piano player, that's sort of my instrument. I'm a singer and a piano player. And so I guess when you play piano, you get a very good background of how, you have so much range when you're writing on piano. And then when you go to take an idea from piano and put it on guitar, suddenly it's the same range, but it's put together differently. So then trying to play on guitar what I played on piano is almost impossible. So then I would sort of pick up the guitar and say, okay, I don't know how to play this part on guitar, but I can make this other part on guitar that goes along with the piano part, because I can play that. And so the song sort of kind of took shape based on my capability with the instruments I was using, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So putting this whole thing together, what did that take exactly?
A lot of patience.
Right. It usually does.
A little bit of money. Yeah. I will say, So I recorded with David Minahan at Woolly Mammoth, who is one of the kindest, best people I have ever worked with in my life. Anyone who will kind of put up with me, just the two of us in a room for an end, and me kind of making stuff up as I go along, and just being a great partner, a great person to kind of bounce ideas off of, and to help me say, look, I want it to sound like, and I'd make a sound with my mouth. And he'd be like, okay. And then he'd try 4 or 5 things. And I'm like, yes, that's how I want the reverb to sound on that part or whatever. So he was really great to work with, but things were constructed very carefully, like piece by piece, they were layered together. They started off as sort of a skeleton of a song, and then with the piano and the vocal. Then I'm like, okay, here are the 7 vocal tracks, because I'm very big into harmonies. So the vocals, and then here's the bass part. And, oh, well, now I'm hearing this other keyboard thing. And so things just sort of happened, and they were put together in real time and then sort of finished in the studio, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we started there. And then when I had the album done, I thought I probably ought to do something with it. And so that's sort of the next steps that I took towards releasing the album.
Okay.
And and there's a lot involved in that too, but I won't go too far down that path.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned how you had been kind of like out of music for a little while, doing the work with plays and podcasts, and that's a whole separate discussion, folks. It's a whole entirely different episode. But was it hard for you to kind of get back into music? I mean, being out of it for like a little while now.
Not at all.
Nice.
It's almost like I just took a nap and I woke up and I'm doing what I love to do. I mean, I love to write music and work with the theater and everything, but performing and writing songs and getting in a room with people and playing the songs and then going on and performing, there's really nothing in the world like it. It's because singing is such sort of it comes from inside you. And so the experience is like, head to toe. It's not, just sitting at your desk writing music on a piano. It's this full body, full sort of environmental experience that you share with the other people in the room with you, whether it's the wonderful, brilliant musicians I'm lucky to play with, or the beautiful audience that's there enjoying it with us.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. This question I'll bet you get a bunch, but I am curious. The band's name, where does that come from?
I'm going to get this wrong. Great grandmother's name.
Whoa.
Yeah, my sister, and my younger sister had done a family tree, and she sent it off to all of us, and I was like, oh, Lovina Falls, except it was Lovina Fall, not with an S. It was Lovina Fall. And I said, oh, if I ever do a new band, that's what I'm going to name it. So that's sort of where that came from.
Oh, that's so perfect too, because it has just that very like kind of mysterious, artsy rock sound to it.
Oh, good.
But that's so cool. So this really comes right from your family. Out of curiosity, do you come from a musical family too?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
My whole family is extremely musical. They're very into. We grew up singing classical music from like age 5. We were in these choirs, treble chorus, which was like a touring choir in New England, and I learned classical and German and all this sort of stuff before I kind of knew how to, do anything else. So
damn, it's a hell of a background there.
Yeah it's good to be around that kind of music too. I mean, to be around music all the time too, because it really helps you appreciate life in a different way.
How so?
Everything becomes sort of musical, when you grow up with it. So it's whether, or at least to me, it's, I'm driving in my car and the sound of, when your tires hit those little bumps on the road and they have a little rhythm to it, or if you're in like an MRI machine and it's kind of making those worry noises, you're kind of writing songs off of it, or you're hearing music in it, or you're riding on the bus and someone's tapping their foot and someone else has a pen clicking and, the air in the bus is making its own noise. It's like things sort of become their own sort of songs. Do you know what I mean? And can be very inspiring.
I never thought about it that way before, but yeah, okay. And I will also challenge any of the listeners out there, make a song from an MRI machine. I dare to do that. I dare you to do that, folks. Make it happen. All right, so let's talk about a little more about your background, because I know that you were in the band Mistle Thrush, which was a big deal back in the late 90s into the 2000s. Does Lovina Falls take anything from that?
I would say yes-ish. Me. I mean, I guess we wrote, Mistle Thrush wrote everything together. So all of the songs were parts of everybody. And so I am 1/4 of Mistle Thrush, so therefore there is that there. And there were songs like I would bring in a song, or the bass player would bring in a song, an idea, and then we would kind of deconstruct and reconstruct it, and it would become a Mistle Thrush song. Basically, what Lovina Falls is sort of like maybe something I would bring into Mistle Thrush that would then be reinterpreted. So this is almost like the preliminary version of what that would be. The difference is there's nobody to reinterpret it. It's only me, so it only has my own interpretation. So it's definitely a different experience from my standpoint, because there's nobody to bounce the ideas off of, or to say, hey, that's a really bad thing that you're doing. So it just stays, it becomes part of the song, and you hope it flies. But the songwriting process is a lot different for sure.
I imagine because, like you said before, you have a foursome, so everyone's kind of kicking in their own ideas and thoughts and what have you, and now it's just, well, you on your own. So what's that like to more or less be the everything when it comes to the songwriting process?
It's a lot harder. In Mistle Thrush, like a lot of times we would just kind of go into the space and just start playing. And we could play for 20 minutes, and then eventually you kind of get a song out of it, and you sort of riff, and then you get parts, and then you take it apart and put it back together. But when you're doing it yourself, you're just kind of like going along. So basically what I'll do now is I'll write a little piano melody and record that, and then I'll go back and I'll sing a little vocal melody over it. And then I'll say, okay, what does this mean? Does it need more? Does it need less? What parts? And then I'll work from there. But there's, again, nobody to bounce it off of. So the process is much more, it's more finite. It doesn't go on for 20 minutes. It's whenever you press stop on record is when the song is done. So it's definitely a different approach.
I'll bet. How is it when it's time to say, okay, this is done? Do you ever... Are you the kind of person where it's hard to walk back and say no more?
Yes, because I'm a perfectionist. What is the expression? Don't let good enough get in the way of that's what it is. Don't let perfection get in the way of good enough. And so that's I think one of the things that I've actually had to work on. The first song I recorded was On Your Side. I spent more time recording that song than on recording Hologram, because Hologram was the last song I recorded, and that one probably took half a day, the whole thing, whereas On Your Side was a couple of days, a lot of different parts, a lot of kind of reconstructing and so on and so forth. So the process itself got a lot easier too, as I became more accustomed to sort of my own style and how to put the songs together.
Nice. All right, let us talk about On Your Side, because this is what opens the whole album, and it is such a powerhouse song. I really, really love it. Was there a reason why this one kind of opens the album?
I guess it just sort of, it was the first song I recorded. So it sort of is the introduction, to me, to Lovina Falls, because this is actually how it started. It was this song I recorded, and I'm like, okay, here we go. We're going to do this. And so from a positioning standpoint, that was really the opening song of the set, so to speak. And it's also, I think, the first song I wrote start to finish. Since writing with Mistle Thrush 20 years, 15 years ago, or whatever it was. So it was kind of like, okay, I did this. Now we're going to put this one first. And the recording, I think, came out pretty okay.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Does it get any easier to do this since you have such a strong background already?
It does. Yeah, it definitely does. It's much, you know what to expect. It's not like the first time I went into a studio and recorded vocals and I was like, wait, I can't breathe at the same time I'm singing because it'll make a noise. Like, you get it, and you understand sort of the process. And you also understand that every mistake you make costs you money. So you have to be very prepared when you go in, to really have at least your thoughts together in order to let sort of what's going to happen naturally happen without wasting a lot of time trying to get to that point,
I understand. How about the order of the other 9 songs? Was this thing that you had to really spend a lot of time figuring out, okay, this one, and then that one, this one, and that one?
No, yes, but no. I think I put the album together much like you put a live set together. So you think about sort of how is someone going to experience it? Listening to it, and it's you can kind of throw an awful lot at someone 3 or 4 songs in a row, and then when you throw something else in there that's very different, it can be very jarring. So to me, it's almost like it's like a conversation, and you're trying to kind of change subjects in a way where they naturally sort of flow into each other, even though the topic can be very different.
I do like the flow of this thing. It's got a really, really good flow. But I'm curious about the sound. How would you describe this? I mean, I can give you my take on it, but I'm curious how you view it.
That has been the hardest thing for me. Even, putting something up on Bandcamp and, it'll ask you influences or type of music. And I don't have a very good point of reference. I'm way too close to it. So I'd actually love to hear what you have to say.
Ooh, okay. All right. So I think it has a very strong rock kind of core to it. It's got a very kind of trippy electronica feel to it as well. It's not too heavy. It's not too light. It's I think it's got a very beautiful dreamy sound to it. That's what that would be my take. I think that this is also reinforced by the cover art for this. It's a beautiful blue flower with, I believe, a red background. Where did this one come from?
So I designed the album, all the artwork and everything, and that's a photo of a flower that I took in Bermuda. But I can't remember what kind of flower it is now, which is terrible. But the flower is actually red.
Okay.
So the whole thing was sort of redone. And then if you look closely in the flower petals, I did a painting, and the painting has all of these numbers in the painting that are sort of hand scripted numbers, and that's in the background of the flower. So if you look closely at the petals, you can see the numbers in the flower petals, and that has to do sort of with the calculation and the calculating the angle of our descent. It's putting it sort of all together in sort of a natural meets kind of mathematical or scientific world. It's the way I look at the way I write music and the way I hear sounds. It's a bit of alchemy, and it's about taking things that are organic and you mix them with electronic, and again, going back to what we were talking about before about the sounds in the room or something, it's these things are part of everything we experience every day. So taking them and putting them into something together, you have organic, you have artificial, electronic, you have almost machine sounds, and how does it blend to create an experience? So the album art was meant to sort of do the same thing.
Wow. You are definitely dispelling the notion that band names and album names are just random words plucked out of the dictionary.
I will say Mistle Thrush was.
Okay, I got you. But this one clearly
yeah.
not. You clearly put a lot of thought into all of it. Is that just the voice of experience talking?
Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
Cool.
It is. I mean, I will say I didn't put the same amount of thought into the titles of the songs. So to be honest, but yeah, it's definitely from experience. It's sort of thinking about how are people going to interpret or misinterpret your sound by looking at their album or hearing your band name. And to just sidebar for a second, in Mistle Thrush, our band name was always mispronounced. And it was always spelled wrong. And the funny thing, and I was kind of joking about picking out of the dictionary, but I did. There was a picture in the dictionary of the mistle thrush bird. And we picked that name because that ate poisonous berries, but lived. It was, and the berries are the mistletoe berry, and it had all this symbolism and blah, blah, blah. And, but we would go and play shows and people would spell it like missile, shooting missiles from, whatever, warships and whatnot. And at one point we were playing, it might have been the 930 Club or something. And this guy comes in, we're down in the downstairs getting ready to go. And this guy comes downstairs who works at the club. He goes, "Hey, is anybody here from the band Nickelbush?" And immediately I was like, my next band is never going to be named anything that people cannot understand or at least hopefully pronounce. So that was that. That was the lesson learned.
Nickelbush. That's not even close. Jeez. How did they get that one?
I don't know, but yeah, that was a lesson learned.
The irony is, if you had actually gone with that one, you might have had this big competition with the band Nickelbush and
right.
Nickelback facing off for the first time on stage.
That would be something.
that'd be something, all right. That'd be something. Man. So when it comes to naming the songs, though, do you put a ton of thought into that, or is it more of just whatever kind of comes to mind? You think, all right, good, we're going with that one.
I think a lot of it, even with lyric writing, a lot of it has to do with sort of what comes out when I first write the song.
Mm.
And because it's almost like I write the music and the melody and everything first. I write the lyrics sort of last. And it's because the music almost tells me what the song is about, but it's true. It's like the music sort of dictates what the song is about, how the melody goes, and then it kind of creates an emotion, which then creates a lyric. And then the song titles generally come from the lyrics, depending on what I end up singing at the time. I was inspired by whatever was happening, but like Hologram, for example, is actually a working title because I have this really amazing pedal that takes sound and kind of reconstructs it and creates these crazy awesome loops from it. And that pedal was the middle section of the song where there's this crazy instrumental thing, and it's called a hologram pedal. So that's why that song was called Hologram, because I was too lazy to come up with any other name. So that's the only one that has like a lazy name. But the rest of them, they're all sort of part of the story.
Oh man, yeah. That's too funny. Somewhere out there is a band, and their name is going to be a placeholder or temporary title or something like that. And they realize
your name here.
They realize, oh shit, we didn't come up with a name. Good enough, it's fine.
Exactly.
All right, so we talked before about this being a solo album, but you in fact worked with a lot of different musicians on different songs. Are these folks that you've known from the past, or are they kind of new faces for you?
Everybody is a person I've known from the past.
Cool.
So I will say, like, what would happen is, as an example, with On Your Side, I wrote the song, and I needed the bass to be punchier, and I couldn't play the bass part well enough. I couldn't play the bass for what the song needed. And I was like, aha, I know who I need. I need Matt from Mistle Thrush. So I called him up and I said, hey, Matt, come do a bass part. When I was doing the single that I'm actually going to be releasing in early spring later this year, I had a guitar part that I couldn't play. And I called my friend Scott Padalano from Mistle Thrush, and I said, hey, Scott, you want to come in and play some guitar? So, and then there's a little bit of Todd Demma from Mistle Thrush looped on the song Today. There's like a little bit of his drum loop in the middle of the chorus. And who else played? Marnie Hall plays violin. She came in, and she's just an absolute doll and an amazing musician. And I can't play violin. So I was like, please come in and play violin on these two songs. So she came in and brought the violin, and my husband, Brendan, plays guitar. So he was unfortunate. He kind of got the short end of the stick where he lives in the house with me. And I'm like, I need a guitar part. Can you record it so that I can cut it up and put it back together and add it in the background? And so I had a little bit of help from home too. And then Chuck Ferreira, he plays drums with actually a number of bands. Yeah. I had played a show with him a couple of years ago. As a friend of ours had a birthday, and we had a surprise performance. She's a big Patti Smith fan. So I went and did the song. It was the first time I met Chuck. And Chuck said to me then, hey, if you ever do anything, I'd love to play drums. So I was like, I need drums on Down the Night because the drum machines are not cutting it, and I cannot play drums. That's probably also why the album has a little bit of an electronica feel to it too, because everything was really synthesized. I love synths, and I have a lot of them, and I work a lot with synth sounds. But when you need real drums, you need real drums, and I can't do it. So Chuck was awesome. He brought drums for that and for Vaulted. And then Dave Minahan helped at a few spots where the guitar power chords, I just couldn't get them to be powerful enough. Get my hands just don't quite make that power. So, yeah.
So this is almost like an impromptu reunion of Mistle Thrush.
It is, and actually, the live band is 3/4 of Mistle Thrush. So
really?
Matt plays bass, and Scott plays guitar in the live band. We had our first show in the beginning of December.
Oh, and, cool!
Yeah, and we actually snuck a Mistle Thrush song in the set too, just because we thought it'd be kind of fun.
Did anyone catch that?
Oh yeah,
oh
yeah,
cool!
It was good, and it's really funny because it's one of the ones we never released, but we used to play it all the time. So, and when we literally, like, the first 3 drum hits, people knew the song, and it was a total thrill to be able to do that again. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so cool! That's so cool.
Yeah.
Now, have the other guys from the band been like keeping up in music? Have they been like going on to play other projects?
They have actually. So Todd, the drummer, is currently and now the drummer for the Chameleons UK. And he's actually on tour with them and he's recording an album. I think they're recording an album at the end of this month. Matt was in a band called the Daylilies for a long time. And Laura, his wife, actually sings backing vocals when we perform live. So it's kind of like a family affair there too. And Scott Padalano, we call him Scott P. He played with Gene Dante for a long time.
Really?
So yeah.
That is so cool.
Folks have been around doing their thing. And Marnie used to play with I always get Rick Berlin.
Yeah.
Ages ago. Yeah. So she's definitely been around in the rock scene forever. And, she's been nominated for Boston Music Awards and stuff like that. So I'm really incredibly lucky to have the musicians that I'm playing live with. We also have an amazing keyboard player. I will say I felt bad for anybody who was going to try to come in and play keys, because I wrote everything on keys. So that I'm like, it kind of has to be sort of like this. And I have an amazing keyboard player, very old friend of mine from New York. So she comes in and she makes the trip for rehearsals, 3.5 hours, drives to Boston to do these rehearsals. But she's incredible.
Oh my God. Yeah. So cool.
Yeah.
How was it playing the show in December, especially where this was, where it was basically the old band back together again?
It was a total thrill. It was great to be able to play the Lovina Falls albums front to back. Like, it was the first time all of the songs had been played live. We had to reorchestrate a lot of them too, because there aren't. We have 2 guitars live. There are almost no guitars on the album. So we took a lot of the. I guess the best way I could describe it, and I have described it, is sort of like I wrote a story and I brought it to a room full of wordsmiths, and we reconstructed the story. So the plot is still there and the story is still there, but it's been interpreted a little bit differently. So live has more edge. It's got more volume to it. It's got a little more of the sort of evident dynamics from like back in the Mistle Thrush days, where we used to have a lot more of that on stage. It's a lot easier to do that live too, to have that kind of a dynamic shift. It's very easy to do when you have volume to work with.
Oh, definitely. You mentioned the stories of the songs. What are some of the stories that you have on this album?
Well, I've always been intentionally unclear about the stories when I write a song, because to me, listening to music is up to the listener to decide what the song is about. So I don't outline a specific story. I'm not like a Bob Dylan, where I'm writing sort of like, here's the story, and you kind of wandering along through the story and you get kind of what's happening. I'm also not that clever, so I think maybe that has something to do with it. But no, I like folks to listen to the music and interpret it in a way that resonates with them. So I would say each song has a concept or an idea or feeling or an experience, but it's vague enough where the listener can interpret it any way they like. It's almost like, hopefully it's a soundtrack for something that they've experienced if they can connect with it. And then the song is unique for each person to listen to.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
Is this a one-off, or is there another album in the works?
Oh, there's another album in the works.
Oh,
absolutely. Cool. Yeah. I'm actually back in the studio next week. And at the end of the month, there's probably 5 or 6 songs already, like little nuggets of songs happening. So I would say at the very least, there should be maybe 2 or 3 more singles before, maybe by the fall, maybe even an EP by the fall if all goes well. So, yeah.
Is this going to follow the same kind of like musical path as the first album, or is it totally different?
It's hard to say. That's a really good question. I don't know. It kind of depends on how things evolve. Yeah, because they like I said, a lot of them sort of start the same with piano and vocals, but where they go kind of depends on. I guess it just kind of depends on whim. Where I am at that point in time, where I'm adding the next parts. Yeah.
I imagine that that's the case for a lot of musicians, like in terms of what they're going to do. It's like, it depends on the mood. Depends like how I'm feeling and what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does it feel to be doing this like new project, to be like, back on stage, playing live music, to be putting out albums?
Well, it feels pretty great.
Yeah.
But, I will say truthfully, the same things, you have the same experiences 20 years later or whatever that you did when you first did it, where you put something out there and you don't know if anyone's going to like it. You perform it. You don't know if people are going to leave the room. Like before the record release party, I had this dream that like we went on stage and we started playing and the room just emptied. And I was like, oh, this is what we're going. This is what's going to happen.
Oh,
This is where we
no.
are. Yeah. And so the same sort of fears and insecurities and anxieties follow you through life when you're putting something out there. And you're like, the difference I think now is I'm okay with it if people don't like it. I know that sounds weird, but it's not. I just hope to connect with one person. I hope one person hears it and says, hey, that's all right, because I just enjoy doing it so much. It's just I want to share that with someone.
Yeah. I think that's experience talking, because I think for someone who's brand new, they probably worry like, oh man, I got to pack the club. I got to sell like 1 million CDs, what have you. You get older, you're like, if it sells nothing, whatever. I'm just having fun doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it, like I said, you do still have those anxieties. Like I said, like, are people going to leave the room or something?
Oh God, that's the worst.
But you're always like, I know, but it's what makes when someone stays that much more important and that much more meaningful, because you're like, oh, they actually stayed. Maybe they didn't want to be rude, but they stayed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine that also just the experience of being on stage, but also just like everything that kind of goes with doing a show, arriving at the venue, loading out your gear, meeting the other bands, meeting the sound guy.
Well, I actually haven't done all of that yet. The show that we played, we did it we booked it in at the Rockwell, so it was a theater.
Cool.
So there were no other bands on the bill.
Oh, okay.
And we had circus artists open the bill. So we had a contortionist and we had an aerial hoop artist. And so it was in the theater. There was, people were sitting down, and we hired the sound man in advance. And so we set up that, you know what I mean? So it was a little bit different. It was like putting on a theatrical production almost, without being theatrical,
That's a good idea.
But the next show we play will most likely be in a club with other bands, and it will be that whole get up, set your stuff up, and then get off stage so someone else can go and get your gear out of their way and get it out the door, and it's snowing out and you're parked 4 miles away, and that whole thing, and you hope you didn't get a ticket. And,
my God.
That's all to come.
Yeah,
so I can't really answer that question yet.
Yeah. I lived in Boston for about 8 years, and for me, there was always that like routine of going to a show, like seeing who's on the bill, getting your beer at the bar, getting your spot that you want to be in for the whole show, seeing your buddies if they're there. Then afterwards, it's like, okay, is the tea still running?
Yep, exactly. So,
man,
but I expect more to come on that.
I'll bet. Now, I could not pass up the chance to talk to someone who's been doing this for so long and who's so like well versed in the area. Favorite clubs to play at?
Oh, well, so many of them are changed.
Sure enough. Yeah, sure enough.
Yeah. We had a lot of favorite clubs, and I think the only one that's still left is the Middle East Downstairs.
Yes.
But there are a couple of clubs I'd really like to play at. I'd like to go back to the Middle East Downstairs. That was wonderful. I'm interested in playing the Sonia stage. I think that stage is beautiful.
That place
is
so
really
nice.
Good in there.
Yeah,
it's really
so
nice.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. I think the Crystal Ballroom is also pretty great.
Yes.
Yes. And then of course the Sinclair, right?
Yeah.
One can dream.
Oh yeah, the Sinclair I think is like the place. I think it's one of those things where if you're on the stage of the Sinclair, you think, yep, I'm a big deal now.
Exactly. Right. Hey. Or you got a really good opening slot for someone else.
Hey, whatever works.
Whatever
works.
Yeah. I mean, the sound on stage is so important from a singing perspective. If you have no monitor, you sound terrible. And so that's why, it's if I wasn't so concerned about the vocals, I could play anywhere and be absolutely thrilled. I mean, I'm absolutely thrilled playing anywhere anyways, but the idea of being able to play somewhere where you can actually hear yourself, and because the sound is good, you can really put on the show you want to put on, I think is important.
I'll bet.
There were a lot of smaller rooms though. I'm actually very intrigued by, I'd like to kind of do maybe something at the Lizard Lounge or something like that. There's lots of good intimate environments. Like I really loved the Rockwell. I can't say enough good things about the Rockwell. I mean, that we're hopefully going to play there again in the summer. But I really, really like that room a lot because it has a different feel, and it's a different kind of experience. But I do like the smaller, intimate environments too, because you can really connect with people.
Oh, definitely. And of course, you can have the aerial artists, the contortionists, and the trapeze artists too, right?
Yeah, in the big rooms you can, in the
That
little
is
ones you
such
certainly
a
can.
cool idea.
Yeah,
I love that because
yeah.
I've been to some shows where they'll have some aspect of performing arts along with the
Mm.
bands, but man, this is a whole another level there. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, it was good. Maybe we'll do it again, if we do another one in the fall or something, but we'll see.
Were there any bands from the Mistle Thrush days that were just like always your bands to play with?
We played with lots of different kinds of
I'll
bands,
bet.
and we made and we actually we would play with everyone from like Quintain Americana to I'm trying to think of one of the more to Amanda Palmer or something like that. It's like our shows were we played with the Strokes, and we played with Lush, so it was like we played with lots of different kinds of bands nationally as well as locally that were a big variety for us, and it was interesting because I remember, oh gosh, I wish do you remember the band Tree?
Yes,
They
yes,
were like,
yes.
yeah. So we played one show where the singer from Tree came up and we did like a duet. Do you know what I mean?
Oh my
And that's like
God.
so not what you would expect, this kind of dream pop band and Tree, but we played with a lot of, I mean, there's so many great bands back there, and I feel so bad I can't remember them off the top of my head. I am very old, so there you go. but yeah, there were so many great musicians, and many of them are still in town, and some of them are still doing their own thing, which is beautiful. It's so, I love to see people who continue to follow their dream, doing what they love to do.
That's one of the things I love to see is bands that I may have heard in, say, like 2000 or 2002, and I'll see, oh, they're playing somewhere that they're still playing. Holy God!
Yeah. It's pretty fun.
Oh, that. All right, folks. Well, we are coming down to the end of the conversation, but Valerie, of course, the big question that people want to know is what can they look forward to in the weeks and months to come?
Well, we are working on some shows coming up. I'm thinking sometime in maybe April. We'll be back out April, May. I have a couple of live videos from the performance we played that we're going to be releasing. I have a YouTube channel. It's at YouTube at Lovina Falls. So we will be posting more of those. I have this visualizer for one of the songs on the album, Too Bright to Burn. That's just an animated I don't know what to call it. I guess visualizer is the word that people use now, but it's basically like cartoon design that I drew. It's like 1,000+ individually drawn animated frames that were then I colored them all in, and then I put them all together and reconstructed them. And it's almost just meant to be something that's on in the background while you're listening to the song. That one's going to come out probably next week. So the YouTube channel, we're hoping to kind of release some more live stuff, and some kind of fun little videos between now and the next time we play. And like I said, going into the studio now, so I'm hoping to have a release out maybe by March. We have a new single that will probably be out then, and more to come.
You can also go to lovinafalls.com, Lovina falls.com. You'll find everything there, the music, the videos, all the information. And Valerie's certainly looking forward to the next conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you.
Likewise.
Watching the crowd that stands outside and tipping my head to either side. I say, you may be the man who stands and wait to catch him before they can escape the light. Ignore the politics of fear, nothing left to keep me here. I look 'em in the eye and say a very soft goodbye today. You've made them believe that you're sincere, but you know it's E3 you're the nearest fight. My God, you've made such an awful mess
And with that, we bring this episode to a close. Thanks for listening, and if you haven't already, check us out on Facebook under Citywide Blackout, and Twitter and Instagram under Citywide Max. You can catch this and all your favorite episodes on your favorite podcast platform, and new episodes are added every week, as well as on Boston Free Radio every Saturday at 10 p.m. You get at me at citywidemax@yahoo.com if you want to suggest a guest, submit your music, or just drop us a line. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.